Start my timer so I don't go over. Great sessions today. Loving the environment that we're in. I enjoy the Zoom paneling and Tom, Amber, Chelsea, Isha. Hope I got your name right. Kim, it's great to have you here. And thank you, Julia, and the whole team for putting this together. So let's all take a deep breath. I love getting to talk about synchronicity. I do see a hand up in the Q&A. Oh, chat is disabled, Q&A. Okay, go ahead. Great. So I'm studying the science of synchronicity from a perspective of quantum physics. And my background, I have an MS in physics from San Francisco State University. And I've been passionate about quantum physics for 25 years since college, and particularly passionate about a method of study called the Fourier transform that has guided my work. So what I want to talk about today is the notion of wholeness. And Lisa talked about wholeness in her opening talk. The question that arises in modern society a lot is, how do we get something from nothing? This is actually what the Big Bang theory is all about, right? You get this big bang of explosion of matter and material into the void. And what that presupposes is that the void is what's there by default, and the particles and stuff come into the void. We assume that we get something from nothing. And so we answer that question without even thinking about it. But I want to ask a different question, because this question is like kind of a method, a philosophy of lack, right? Because if I don't do something with myself, I'm nothing. If I don't fill up my time with activities, what am I worth, right? It's a sense of, if I don't do anything, there's nothing there. I think there's a different question we can ask. How do we get something from everything? And the picture in the background here is hard to see, but it's a garden. Our world is like a garden. And if you don't do something on a particular day in a garden, you just sit there and watch, what happens? It still grows, right? If you have a factory and you don't do something in the factory, nothing happens. There's no worth, there's no net output. But in a garden, things still grow. Life continues. It's such a relaxing concept to realize, we don't have to be doing something all the time. And still we have worth and there's value in our lives. A gardener's job is to weed, to pick and choose what they're going to keep and nourish. And then the role of synchronicity that I'm going to talk about today is to be those plants that are growing without you even asking. And your job is not to create everything in your life, but to pick and choose. Oh, I want to follow this path, or I want to follow this opportunity, or this person said something to me that I want to follow up on. You're the gardener and you're picking and choosing what you're going to nurture, but it's growing on its own because you're starting from wholeness. So synchronicity is the way the whole takes care of the parts. I want to tell you a brief example of this that happened to me just this week. So I joined an Aikido dojo. Aikido is a martial art that I did when I was a kid, and I joined a dojo. And I get not only the physical action of the martial arts, but also an emotional aspect where I feel some shame and some embarrassment about things I can't do very well, and my physical body is limited. So it's a really holistic experience for me. And I didn't really want to go to Aikido on Monday because it was so cold out here in California. But I went anyway, and the door to the dojo was open. And at first it seemed like I could just suffer through it. Like, it was really cold outside, and I was supposed to be, making it through that experience without like complaining. But I realized I didn't raise my hand and say anything, and I went home and I was feeling sort of frustrated and disconnected and some anger about it. Well, I wrote to my teacher and said, I just wanted to let you know, I noticed a pattern in myself of not raising my hand with a concern I had, and then feeling disconnected and like I was going to pull away from the dojo. And I didn't want to do that. And what I learned from her was actually eye-opening to me, that there was a whole history to this issue from the pandemic, where they left the door open for safety concerns, for germs to escape. And it was very expensive to buy a air filter for the industrial space and all that. None of that I had realized was going on. And so the door being open at Aikido, and the cold weather even outside, was a synchronicity for me, because it led to a learning in me about what was really going on for other people. And it allowed me to shift from my own sort of defensive, self-focused way of thinking to sort of victim state, into proactive. Suddenly there was something I could do to help. And I was on the same side as everybody there. And I felt like more part of the dojo. So synchronicity is the way the whole takes care of the parts. It's the way that the weather being cold and the door being open were actually helpful moments on my journey towards deeper self-love. And so I think that synchronicity is a measure of how things fall together in time. And it leads us to experiences of deeper self-love or love of other people. And so there's this connection with the work that the Institute of Love and Time is doing in this work on synchronicity. I'm so grateful for that. So what is wholeness? Well, in science, in technology, we have this example of digital filters. And I use the example of a photography class. If you have a photo of the territory here, that's some city image, and you want to create a Fourier transform map of it, what you do is you look at all the different pixels on the screen, and you identify patterns of bright and dark that happen in waves. You can't really see it, but there are patterns in the image there of the way that the data is arranged. And for each wave in a certain direction with a certain frequency of light and dark, you put a dot on the map. And so on the right here, you have a map of all the dots that come from this picture. And you can't tell as a human, but if you put this into the computer, you put in the map on the computer, it would spit out the image on the left. It's a perfect map. It's amazing. And this is what turned me on to this study early on in college many years ago. It's just such a beautiful mathematics. But what you can do with this that you can't do with the original territory is you can apply a filter. It's called a low pass filter because it keeps the lower frequencies in the middle and it removes the higher frequencies on the outside. Those higher frequencies are associated with like the detail, the high resolution. And so what have we done? We've lost resolution. We've lost the detail. Now, what's important here is that you've lost the detail not in one location, but everywhere. That's the wholeness aspect. You've made a single small change to the map, specific change to the map, to the part of the map, and you've changed the whole of the territory. You made the whole thing blurry. I can change even a bigger region, remove even more high frequencies, and I get a really blurry, broad territory. So this information about the overall blur of the picture, the color tones, was present in the original image, but it was you had to remove some of the more information from the map in order to reveal this information here. You can do the same thing in the opposite direction. You can apply a high pass filter, which removes the overall color tones, but keeps, if you can see it, keeps the edges. So the edges of the image are instantly highlighted automatically. There's nothing here, there's no person that's like thinking about it. It's just an automatic, this information is already present in the data to begin with. You just have to learn what you're going to remove in order to reveal it. And I like to think about your inner map in the same way. When you make a change to your inner map, you affect the whole territory. This is what Lisa was talking about earlier. When I walked into the dojo and had frustration about the door being open and felt like I couldn't speak up, I had a certain inner map, and I saw everything as a conflict. I saw myself as separate from the community. After sharing my feelings and learning what was going on for other people, my map shifted from feeling like a victim to feeling like a part of the solution, like there's something I could contribute. And I actually ended up bringing a heater and a bunch of air filters that we had at our house that we could loan. So I felt like I was now part of a solution that I didn't even realize was possible before, because my inner map changed. So think about carving away from wholeness in your life, not having to create everything yourself, but imagine the garden that's already blooming. What are you going to carve away? What are you going to weed out and allow the rest to flourish? Think about a rainbow as a good metaphor. A rainbow is beautiful because of what's not there. You have this white light coming from the sun behind you, bouncing off the clouds, and then separating into the colors. And if you think about it, the reason you see red is because the blue and the green and the yellow have been removed. It's not adding red to the sky, it's removing blue and green and yellow from the light that gives it the color. So a rainbow is beautiful because of what is not there. And I want to leave you with this idea of what can you remove? to reveal a solution. At the dojo, when the door was open and I was frustrated, I had to remove my assumptions about what was the background story in order to reveal the solution of me feeling more connected to the community and less isolated, feeling like I was less victimized and more able to contribute to the solution. That was a real shift in me that just had to do with removing assumptions about what other people were thinking and feeling. That happened from me noticing the trigger moment, the door, the synchronicity of the door being open to the cold, and then deciding I didn't want to sit with that trigger emotion without doing something different with it. And then I opened up and I shared with my teacher what I was feeling, and that opened a door to greater conversation, different emotions. So I think synchronicity is a way that the universe is helping us grow and guiding us to a deeper sense of self-love and understanding. Synchronicity is the way that the whole takes care of the parts. And the whole includes the weather, it includes the door, it includes my sensei, it includes the other students. It's all of that showing up in a way that is ultimately serving me. And so I want to leave you with the suggestion that everything that happens to you today in this week can be seen maybe as part of a synchronicity, but it's a circumstance which falls together in time. Not necessarily everything looks that way at first. A situation whose meaning becomes clear in the future. That's my way of looking at synchronicity. It wasn't clear to me what the door being open meant at first, but over time I began to see that there was some deeper meaning to it. Okay, so let's take some questions. Do I have any questions in the chat? Q&A. Okay, so if there's a question, a specific question, I haven't seen one, I'd love to answer it. I'm going to leave you with this graphic. The apples on the tree, this is a tree of all the possibilities, the way that you're choosing your path through life. And the apples are those healing moments, those healing possible futures, the way that life can show up to support you. And the synchronicities are what's happened earlier on the tree, the door being open that leads to the conversation with my sensei, but doesn't automatically look like it has any meaning to begin with. Carolee says, what about those synchronicities that don't seem meaningful, like the most random thing repeating? So with something repeating that seems random, it's a good question. I like to look inside. I don't think synchronicity is telling me something from the outside. It's my own inner self speaking to me through my environment. I am part of the whole. And so the whole is presenting itself to me in specific ways so that I can see myself more clearly. So if you just see the number 7 appear a bunch of times, it may or may not be meaningful to you. But you can look inside and decide, what is the meaning that this carries for me? Maybe it can be a momentary, like a chance to stop and check in. When I noticed that the door was open and I was cold, and in the past, I might not have noticed that I had some underlying emotion. But having done some practice, now I take a look and I say, there's a situation happening. It's creating a challenge for me. And maybe there's something deeper that I can look into here. And so the situations just inspire an inquiry. And the inquiry then is something that I use my normal practices of meditation and whatever else they might be, of mindfulness, to understand what's going on for me emotionally, and then decide how I want to respond to it, maybe in a new way. I think synchronicities are opportunities to respond in a new way to our circumstances. And circumstances do repeat again and again until we get the message. We have these caterpillars in our yard that are turned into monarch butterflies. And it's a great example. It's just so inspiring to me to watch them. But what can you remove to reveal a solution? That butterfly was present inside the monarch caterpillar the whole time until it emerged in this new form. So we're going to wrap up. Are synchronicities my confirmation bias, or manifesting, or precognition? There's a picture of my contact information if you want to reach me. Synchronicities are, I'm not going to answer that. I don't have a definitive answer. I think maybe all of the above.
And may I interrupt you, Sky?
Yeah.
For any additional questions and answers, just in the interest of time management, I think people can go to the main lobby chat after we're finished right here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up. Thanks, everybody.